Back to the NBS using version 3 rules. This one's going to be Aspern Essling. This is an interesting game. This is actually, well, it's an interesting situation. The game has its interesting points too, but this is during the 1809 campaign, and Charles was sent reeling back by Napoleon already. Has fallen back behind the Danube. Vienna's been lost. But this is really Charles has outwitted Napoleon here. By falling behind the Danube, Napoleon goes through all this effort to build a set of bridges running. Lobau is an island in the middle of the Danube, running across the Danube with this pontoon bridge here, and has pushed his army across. He thinks that Charles is still retreating. He thinks Charles is just going to run, all the way to hell and creation. Now, this was a war that Charles was largely responsible for. Austria has basically, declared war on France again, but couldn't find any allies for the most part. They have some British funding, but Russia's under treaty. Technically, I would assume Prussia is too, but they were expecting Prussia to maybe join in, and they didn't, and things just did not go that well. Charles has reformed the Austrian army, and so the main effect in this is that the Austrians can use their sort of attack columns that I covered in the rules. Basically, they have these massed columns that work kind of like the French assault columns, but they move slower, except when on the road. We'll get to them. Those were originally introduced in the Aspern Essling rules, the original ones, and then got incorporated into the basic version 3.0 rules as kind of, the Austrian army works this way. But here's one of the problems. Austria had a better corps formation, a better corps organization at the beginning of this campaign. And by this point, his officers revolting and whatnot have caused enough problems that he's reverting to that more kind of ad hoc, even though it really, I don't know, less flexible, but also not as well defined and operable within the game type of command structure that you see at like Austerlitz, right? Where this was really Napoleon's first loss, I think, since the Egyptian campaign. He had a lot of trouble, largely because the bridge setup fails, and there's some complexity about that. There's a couple little terrain things on the board. For the most part, though, it's just flat terrain. We got a little elevation here, but we're not going to probably get up there. What happened historically was the Austrian army came in on the first day of the battle, smashed the French position trying to hold a beachhead, or bridgehead is more appropriate, across the river. Significant reinforcements come in late and over the evening, and Napoleon takes the offensive on the next day. However, he's unable to drive the Austrians back, in part because I think it's Davout doesn't show up. He's because of the bridge situations, and so there's a lot here. There are some serious counter issues with this game. What happened was, when it was originally published, the you know, the game was based on certain research and whatever. And within a few years, new research was coming out, apparently, or was made, the designer was made aware of, and they made corrections to it. There was a set of counters released in the Christmas specials for that the gamers would send out. So I got those, and I got some modifications that I'm sure got inserted in here. I don't see anything. But they updated some of the counters. But then for version 3, they changed it further. And there's these little counters I printed out, which apparently are actually the ones that I already had. But there are some differences on them. So like some units that were heavy cav in the original set are no longer heavy cav, and I think the new version, I think the new printing is correct. So I'm using the real counters, not my little homemade ones. I did a pretty good job on these comparatively, compared to what I've done on a couple of other games. Those aren't too bad. I cared more back then. You'll see that there's some numbers that have been changed. That's really just for convenience. At the very, this is unreadable. It could be a 5. It's actually a 3. But I marked up the counters at some point or another, not just now. I thought I was going to have to white those all out and remark them. It turns out I apparently have played this before using the version 3.0 rules, so my lost charts have a little bit of marking on them. Let's take a look at the specifics for this. And again, they released a whole new set of specific rules, because modifiers and such not are going to be different under version 3.0 than they are under the older versions. Okay, first of all, here they go into the counter crappage, and some of it is, hey, some of these counters just get removed from the game, and some of them have different numbers, and some of them are going to have different strengths on there. Yeah, it is something of a mess. Okay. 24.02, this bridge here. It's improvised, narrow, and awash when the Danube arose. Cavalry was especially slowed by this condition, so crossing units had to dismount and cross slowly. This bridge has special movement costs. The movement costs for the Hexar infantry, skirmishers, foot artillery cost 4 to move on it. Cav and horse artillery cost 8, leaders 2. It's considered to count as 2 separate hexes when you're counting command ranges. I don't think that's going to be a big deal. And no stack of units can ever cross this bridge. It has to be crossed individually, unit by unit, which is going to trickle the reinforcements that the French receive in, even though this set of rules doesn't even have an option for lines coming in. I resurrect that option. The flood dike and the breastworks. So there's a flood dike here, that greenish line. And this was used as breastworks to be defended by the French, and it was used as a jump-off point for the attack. Basically, movement-wise, it counts as a slope between 2 hexes, which I don't even know if that has a meaning anymore. Like, yeah, I'm guessing a 2-level hex is what they mean. They still call it slope, but it used to be the terrain levels were designated on the borders. Now, what's weird here is you actually have what looks like a more modern, the non-layer cake terrain here, but the game didn't support that yet when this was written. So that's kind of weird. Fits in well with version 2 or 3, but for close combat it counts as fortified terrain. For a charge it's blocking. For line of sight it's blocking. But it's only blocking if one of the units isn't right on the dike. So it's kind of like a wall or something. Essling's Granary in the Great Garden. So the granary's here, the Great Garden's here. It's not clear that I could set up in the granary, so I don't know. This is a huge building. The granary and Great Garden are considered fortified hexes and are treated as villages for movement but not combat. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna set up like this, I guess. Because I can't have the guns in the granary. The Great Garden, only 2 gun points can fire out of it. Treated as village for movement, but not for combat. The combat's important because combat is weird in version 3.0 in villages. So ammunition shortages. So one of the interesting things is, I think Marengo came out before this, but you know, with the old Austerlitz game, they gave you detailed ammo rolls in version 1.0. Those got removed when version 2 was created. And all the wagons and ammo counters and all the low ammo markers, well, actually, I think the low ammo markers, I don't know if they stayed or not. They're not here in this. This does not have low ammo and straggler recovery markers, which kind of pisses me off. But one of the few battles where ammo supply is a big deal because of this stupid bridge situation, they don't have any markers for it. Which is okay, they do it with a different sort of way, but I may have to dig out those markers from Austerlitz. I ended up never using them in Austerlitz. The straggler recovery, the low ammos you don't need. The straggler recovery you do need, well, you kind of need, but I was just using the chips for it. I know them. So the way this works is there's a bridge back here at Kaiser Ebersdorf, and that can either be up or down. When it's down, during the command phase, you roll a die for each command that's been involved in artillery fire, skirmisher, or close combat during the preceding turn. And if you roll a 6, the command is low on ammo. At that point, okay, and then after that, if the bridge is later up, you can try to recover. If you have an ammo shortage on a 1 or a 2, you lose your ammo shortage marker. And the effects of this are infantry get a -1 check to stand, artillery get +1 to their fire. Now this is a little weird, right? If you recall the fire combat table for version 3 is sort of a bump, you know, every other thing hits and stuff like that because odd die rolls mean something. I don't know if the modifiers count the odds or whatever, but since I play on the chart, I don't know if that's their intent, but since I play with the chart, I'm going to just throw that +1 in or whatever. But it means some of the more morale-intensive effects are going to be kind of skipped over sometimes by a +1. or you might fall into a worse morale effect because of it. In general, the casualties definitely happen more on the low end. Well, they always happen more on the low end. Cav and skirmishers are unaffected, and attack stoppage checks, even for Cav, are modified by -2. Okay. The Imperial Guard and Lobau Island artillery. The Imperial Guard is divisions directly under Napoleon's control. They don't belong to a corps. However, apparently they receive orders. Now, they don't have a commander to receive orders. They have divisions that are under the Imperial Guard that I guess you can order the whole guard, and you're essentially, I don't know where you're sending it to either. I guess Napoleon just thinks to himself whether he wants to do it or not. But you add 20 points to the die roll for, well, 20 base 6. Even though there's no zeros in here, on the 11 to 66 die roll. The two Imperial Guard, you add 2 to the 6's digit or something like that. The two Imperial Guard artillery are already on the board though, and they're deployed on Lobau Island. They can move and shoot from Lobau. They're completely free of any command restrictions, but they have to remain on Lobau Island. Artillery fire from the island batteries benefits from a modifier of -1. Same thing as before, where this could change the morale effects, maybe with an unintended consequence. And it's not clear, again, there's no concept of modified die rolls on here. So by putting the modifier in, there's 2 ways that this is represented. One is with this chart, and another is with a textual representation of what the artillery fire does, which I can't remember how that's represented, but I know half of it, the morale effect, is represented by if it's an odd die roll. And so that's the weirdness. I am just sticking with the chart because there's no way I can remember the weird procedural text thing. Okay. So these batteries have a -1 bonus for them, and the range is going to be 1 less than normal. Such batteries are able to fire 1 hex further than the normal range, but no more than the max range given by the tables and visibility. Well, visibility I can live with. The tables, I guess that means max range is 9 no matter what. You can't extend, if you had like 5 gun points, you can't fire out to 10. And that kind of makes sense because the actual, maximum range that the artillery could even reach is a factor, and you're not going to, unless you have a height advantage or something, you're not going to bounce the guns further, the balls further. There's another Imperial Guard artillery which can trace to any of the IG division commanders, and it can switch back and forth. More weirdness. Aide-de-camp. Napoleon has 2 generals, Mouton and Rapp. And he can tell them, go take command of this and do stuff, basically. Napoleon can issue an order, he has to pay for this, to either of those men. The order is received immediately on the turn it's sent. If the French player rolls for acceptance on the 10 or more column, no if in there, I just add things sometimes. Once they accept their orders, they're placed on Napoleon's hex, and then they start acting on the order. They can be given command of any 2 units of the army or any number of artillery. What do they mean by units? I think they mean brigade size. Counters. But but you could give them a mass artillery battery. These units can now trace command radius to the aide-de-camp. They do not become part of the aide-de-camp's command until he moves into range. They keep their command until Napoleon sends them an order to return the units, or Napoleon stacks with the aide-de-camp during a command phase and issues an order to end. You don't have to roll any kind of acceptance in that case. Napoleon can tell them, stop, and they'll stop. Lannes, French Second Corps, starts the game with Lannes on the board over here. He's commanding a provisional corps that's basically a division of the Fourth Corps back here. And he's defending Essling with that. On the 22nd, the Second Corps, which Lannes is actually responsible, shows up with Oudinot in command. And you have a few options here. You can leave Lannes in charge of the Provisional Corps. You can give him his corps back. I don't know what happens here. If you keep the Provisional Corps, Oudinot stays as corps commander for the Second Corps. The motion for Lannes. Otherwise, Lannes can take command of his own corps when it arrives. If this happens, Oudinot becomes an extra leader on the Second Corps who can be used to rally and stuff like that. I kind of don't like that, but okay. He was pretty much a dude anyway, so. Plus, he should get wounded. There should be rules that, like, you know, Oudinot gets wounded more often but cannot die or something. Lannes provisional. No, that's going beyond, like, that's where the reality, speaking of design for effect, that would be a design for effect thing. There was nothing really actually special about Oudinot that we know about. He just happened to get wounded a lot, which that can happen due to, you know, using him more in combat. But then he got lucky on not dying from all those wounds. Lannes' Provisional Corps can only be disbanded by orders from Napoleon, and this must happen before Lannes can assume command of the Second Corps. So, up above, it kind of seems to imply that Lannes can just decide to give it up. No, he can only give it up. He can only go back to his old corps under orders. Other than Lannes and the aide-de-camp, no French corps can attach any other infantry divisions from another corps. Well, the aide-de-camp can't do anything with infantry divisions, from what I can tell. Any corps can detach any number of divisions via independent orders. Any corps can attach up to one cavalry division from another corps. No French brigade, artillery, or regiment may detach and or assign in an independent order. Now, this is where the exception sort of lies, because I think it's by unit, like by individual piece on the board. Okay. Acting army commanders. If you manage to get Napoleon killed, you can replace him with any marshal. It's going to require that I know who the marshals are, isn't it? Is Oudinot a marshal yet? Probably not. Not if he was subordinate to Lannes. But, yeah. Number of leaders are marked as fighters. Now, fighter has a different... They have the same core meaning, but the implications are different. In the version 3.0 rules, a fighter doesn't matter unless the leader is just like below a 2 leader. In the 2.0 rules, well, not 2.0, because I had to mark these. In the 2.1 rules, fighters were added to say, you know what, this leader was given a certain value due to his, and maybe the leaders were corrected in some cases. Due to his ability to operate within the command structure, but the reality is he was better than that in terms of actually leading the troops, rallying them, and for various combat bonuses. That's all been kind of abstracted away, and a leader is either 2 or better, or they're not for combat purposes, and fighters are considered to be on the 2 or better level. I don't know how I feel about that. I like, little slices, but the little slice in this case may not mean that much. French skirmishers are elite B, as always. Okay. Major variant. Well, so I think they got rid of some of the variants, because I think that's some of the variants had to do with additional troops in most of these, and that may be one of the removals. But they don't have the other thing. So there's a division that was included in the original game that was not in the battle, and I think it wasn't included as like a pay-for option. I would say that would be like one of those, hey, if the French want this, they can pay victory points for it. They shouldn't want it, though, because the real limitation on how many troops they had on the board is these damn bridges. And these may have, they may be in the reinforcements section for the whole thing. I'm not seeing them. I don't know. I don't want to look too much, but yeah, a whole division is just not on the board in this one. But the bridge itself, so you have 3 options. One is you follow the historical, is the bridge up or is it not? Second is each player rolls 2 dice. If the French roll greater than the Austrians, the difference between the rolls is the number of turns the bridge is up. If the Austrian roll is greater than the French one, the bridge breaks and it's impassable for twice the difference of turns. In either case, the number of turns has elapsed. Repeat the procedure. If they roll equal, the bridge is up for the current turn, but you have to roll again for the next turn. You can hide, the French can hide their die roll. The Austrians obviously can't, because the French have to know, but so it becomes hidden information, but not completely hidden, because so the Austrians know if they rolled really high or low or whatever, because they could see things about the Danube itself, how heavy the water flow was, but they also had some influence on things. They sent a fire ship to attack the bridge and shit like that. So, on an exceptionally high roll, they might know that they've got a good chance of getting a large period of time free from French reinforcements. I kind of like this. It's a cute little roll. Okay. So, and then the final option is, hey, Napoleon managed to come in there and build a stone bridge. No, but he built a much better, his engineers built a much better bridge, or there weren't these problems, and you're allowed to get his whole force on the board as if there's no bridge. That one we're definitely not playing with. That's a 4 victory point option for the Austrians. That wouldn't be the battle. Given my tastes, I think I'm going to go with the let's randomize it. I could see some people wanting to make sure that, the randomization doesn't change the balance and the flow of the battle too much. They want to play the historical battle and play with the historical thing. So what happens? Well, the French reinforcements have to be available, which means they've hit their time period when they're due to come in. Okay, I've got a problem. Because Davout is over here. He may just not show up. And then the bridge has to be available for them to cross. If no interruptions or random interruptions is used, the availability is given on the table on the next page. Yeah. So here we have the turns that they become available off map and then further hindered by the bridges. Each turn the bridge is up, available reinforcements can cross up to one division plus any number of non-divisional units belonging to the same corps. This division comes in on Lobau Island. Following turn, it can enter normally. The following turn. Interesting. Even if more than one group is available, all troops of one group must still be on the Lobau Island before the next group begins to cross the bridge. Davout. Napoleon expected Davout to arrive in time to take part in the battle. Davout was unable to cross due to the bridge, and he never supported Lannes's attack on the 22nd. If no interruption or random interruption options are used, the French player allow the French player to bring the rest of the Third Corps in the game at 8:30, 22nd of May. I ought to get that on the board. It's not in the reinforcements chart. Hold on. So he'll be showing up at 8:30 a.m. if the bridge works. Let's see. If it does enter, it'll cost the French 1 victory point per 2 divisions, or a fraction of that actually makes it on the board. There's already an R3 division up here that's going to show up early. That historically did make it on the board. I don't know how I feel about, these, because the question is, there's two questions. Did you win the game and did you win the battle? And I'm guessing that the victory conditions are already balanced in the sense of it's about did you win the game, not did you win the battle. So I don't know. I don't know what that means to me. Okay, the French reserve of Cav is 3 heavy Cav divisions commanded by Bessier. Among this corps, about 2,500 didn't actually cross the Danube. In the historical option is used, remove the 1 HC Cav and 1 2 HC Cav entirely. All right, I think we want to do this. And I've got them. What is it? The 1 HC Cav and 1 2 HC Cav. I think those are going to be here. But there's the 1 HC Cav. And the 1 2 will be under there. I'm going to pull them out. Those are not some of the special ones. This is going to give the French a victory point, but because these didn't show up, for various reasons, some maybe for scouting roles, some because they drowned. It changes the wreck values, but they don't count as actual casualties. Mark 3 losses off the numeric brigade of the 2-1 HC Cav, but also ship the number of losses needed to wreck the brigade down by 3. I can put those to the right. I haven't done this yet. Let me take care of this stuff. The effect is 2 units are removed from the game. 2 more units. And this thing, I marked off from the right instead of the left, and then changed the letters for the size, which I think is easier than what they suggest, but whatever. It makes it more clear to me that it's not normal losses, so I won't charge victory points. Unless the whole damn thing's destroyed, in which case I'll get confused. I have an interview today. I was supposed to have already had it, but my lack of phone confused the interviewer. Like, what happens is they have you click on set an online meeting up, and you have to write your phone number in the form, and I just write a bunch of 5s in there and left a note. I don't have a phone. I don't have an incoming. I have an outgoing. I can call you. Or we can, use a link. And so far that's worked pretty well. I think I've had one sort of dropped meeting because of this, and it wasn't, it's not even absolutely clear. It's just whatever. But compared to, like, I don't know, not the last time, I think I already had a phone then, but at one point I remember trying to do interviewing, maybe 15 years ago, whatever, more than that. No, about that. I tried to do interviewing without a phone, and it's why I bought, I probably have it up here, bought a little flip phone or something, and then I had to throw that out. They replaced it with this thing, and I couldn't get my account to switch over to that, so I lost, like, I don't know, 2,000 minutes worth of stuff, because I had to pay like $100 a year to refill my account, get a yearly, in order to get a year's worth of service at all, right? And I basically used none of the minutes ever, Anyway, I was keeping that and paying that $100 every fucking year for a long time, and then they switched me on the phone and didn't allow, it didn't work. But yeah, I had to get that for my last interview process, and I remember, like, conversing by email with people where I'm like, yeah, we can set up a time and I can call you from here or whatever. And there was this sort of if you don't have a phone, I guess you're not that interested. I'm glad to see the world's changed. I think the pandemic and everybody working from home really changed the virtualization. But anyway, it caused enough confusion that there wasn't, enough time for me to just call back and do the screening. So I've got that coming a little later in the day, which is fine. I guess I set my alarm for 7 a.m. so that I could do an 8 a.m. interview, and would have gone back to sleep afterwards, and now I'm tired of shit. The other gripe I have is I agreed to do sort of a live play test on the video for someone who should know that I don't like to print out my own rules, and I can't obviously do anything off of a PDF. And I don't know, he's already sent a package of stuff and didn't send rules. He just sent them to me electronic. And I tried to hint that, like, yeah, I'm going to have to go to a printer. I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to do that. I'm going to stop with that. I'm just going to put my foot down. Send me the rules or screw off, because when he first sent me a PDF of the rules, I was like, well, I can't really work with this, so that's great. But I just thought that anyone would get the hint from me that I do, and my videos, that I do not work with electronic stuff. I have a tablet. It doesn't work anymore, so I wouldn't even have anything. Like, I was thinking of this sort of passive aggressive. I'll sit in front of a computer screen, point this camera at the computer screen, and try to read the rules from there. But I just can't operate that way, and my printer is so fucked up, and I don't want to walk an hour each way to print out some damn shit. I wasn't even sure I wanted to do the damn thing. I wish he hadn't sent it. Just pisses me off. Anyway, we're on the Austrian rolls. Austrian tactical formations, like I said, they can attack in the assault column. However, their columns only move 7 movement points unless they're on the road. And I assume they can't do an assault column directly from the road. Like, they'd lose a movement point if they want to attack right off the road, because they'd have to deploy into that non-road column. Austrian cavalry cohesion. Senior commanders had more difficulty with large-scale maneuvering. To simulate this, the Austrian cav have to conduct cav charges alone and may not charge as a stack. Austrian skirmishers, they're normal with sea morale. This means the French are going to have the huge advantage with skirmishers that we've seen throughout the version 3 rolls. However, because firepower is not as important in this version, it is their big advantage. They don't. It's weird because they don't have to charge into combat. They can just position themselves and kind of taunt the enemy. That doesn't feel very French, but that feels like what the game is asking me to do. I don't know. Attachments and detachments. Austrian corps cannot attach infantry division from any other corps. Each can attach up to 1 cav brigade from the reserve corps. The reserve corps infantry cannot be attached to another corps. Any division can be detached to operate on independent orders. Exception V2CR can't reattach to the reserve. That doesn't really seem to apply. A weird exception. The 4th column is the advanced guard. It is part of the 4th Corps, and assume it's on independent orders at the start but can reincorporate, and that'll come in over here under Clanau. Charles was extremely cautious. While in the early advocate of renewed war with France, by the spring he felt his army was still outmatched. He's trying to keep the army's survival. When the Austrian wreck division count reaches 7 or more, Charles orders all corps to execute an emergency retreat. This doesn't go through normal orders channels, and it is implemented immediately on the turn of... This is why. But, it'll be just loose sheets no matter what. So. The 7th mark is reached. All corps headquarters must retreat their full movement point away. All units on independent orders must rejoin their corps. All existing orders are canceled. No new attack orders are issued until the wreck division total falls below 7. Now note, you're going to take straggler losses from this too, which further delays this situation. And all existing orders are canceled, meaning defensive orders, everything. Wow, that's going to cause a mess. That sounds almost like a widespread rout rather than a withdraw. If Charles is a casualty, any corps commander can assume command. They note that all 0 and 1 commanders on the Austrian side should be counted as fighters. That may be different from the original. Austrian minor variants, get rid of the Archduke's confidence rule. That's only worth 1 victory point. Again, that sounds like they're going to lose the battle if it happens. So, commitment of the Grenadier. In any scenario, let the Imperial Guard... No, the 1G and 2G divisions enter with the Reserve Corps headquarters. Fuck. Oh, I know. Yeah. So these are showing up back here. Now there's this R Corps artillery that I don't know what's up with it. It wasn't mentioned anywhere. It wasn't mentioned in the units to keep from the game. It wasn't mentioned in the deployment. I threw it in with the Grenadiers. The French get 2 victory points if this happens. Alternatively, allow these 2 divisions to enter attached to any corps headquarters. This version gives the French 4 victory points instead. Now remember, the Grenadiers can't be attached to a corps under the normal rules. So this is actually a big deal. Like, they would be operating as their own little infantry division under the standard rules. So if you don't take that option. These heavy infantrymen were the best troops in Charles's army. If they had been around, maybe things would have gone well. The 4th column and 5th column were more balanced. To simulate this, the Austrian player can choose to switch the AG and the 2-4 for setup and command purposes. In other words, 2-4 becomes the command under independent orders. I'm going to stick with what we got. My throat's dying. I sound like Bill Clinton when he was, he lost his voice during that one campaign. All right. I feel like this has taken long enough that I'm going to load up an intro video for it just because these specific rules have taken. So, there it goes again. Hold on. For victory, it's your standard mix for most of the NBS games. There's terrain victory points, which are by player up there. Sometimes they're not by player. Casualties, which is going to be total losses. The larger the army, the more losses you can afford to take. So, oddly enough, like, you know, the French pay more for their losses, but if they have the additional units, I think it's Davout or whatever, their loss schedule becomes the same as the Austrian one. Let's see. Yeah. Wrecked formations, each formation has its value. The guards have their own cost. Cavalry have been given enhanced victory point costs. I think that's pretty standard throughout the system, but they call it out here. Because they're more valuable outside the battlefield. And they also make them easier to wreck than they probably should be. Which is to indicate that, like, the local commander, you know, the unit commander would withdraw, and the army commander as well would withdraw the unit more rapidly. It's not just it's kind of weird because it's not just a victory point effect, but the thing is, they're more expensive to replace, and they're valuable in ways outside the battlefield. So using them too heavily is probably a bad idea. If Nappy dies, the Austrians get an extra level of victory. But you have to check to see if he actually dies. If it's a multi-day battles, there's a chance to recover. If he gets a recovery result where he'd be available for the next day or whatever, it's considered to be, he's just fine. And then we have all the scenario orders. It's a 2-day battle. And then there's a reasonably good, well, we got new random events. Let's look at the game specific. Hiller. If Hiller doesn't have engage orders, his rating drops to 0. If he does, his rating drops to 1. If this result is rolled again, Hiller calls in sick and leaves. Archducal confidence. This gives an immediate chance to invoke that special option if it comes up, but you do have to pay the victory point cost for it, which I'm always iffy about things like that, but I don't know. The Archduke took personal risks. When this result is rolled, Charles immediately dashes off and either personally leads a charge into close combat or rallies a routed unit. He may not issue any orders until he does that. Grenadier recovery. You can dissolve the weakest unit of the Grenadiers and distribute the surviving boxes to the other units of the two divisions. Getting rid of permanent kills. The dissolved brigade, though, counts against wreckage. The Austrians were organized in corps, but ordered about in columns, something that was slightly confusing to the commanders involved. When this result is rolled, one randomly determined Austrian divisional commander has misunderstood things a bit on a die roll, equal or less than his command rating. He will immediately attach his command to the nearest corps he does not belong to, automatically accepting that corps' orders. The division follows its new corps and until either it's ordered to return to its original corps or the adopted corps suffers attack stoppage. If you roll higher than the command rating, the commander figures he does not belong anywhere and detaches his division from his corps, stopping as if he had stopped while on independent orders. Oh, God. A rainstorm starts and goes until the player who rolled the event rolls a 5 or 6 on one die during the upcoming command phase. During this, the bridge is down. All movement rates, except for the 3 hexes of cav charges, are halved. Visibility is reduced to 3 hexes, and no skirmisher firing can take place. There's a -2 modifier to the loss tables and the firefight table in close combat. All right, for the French, train catches up. If rolled when the bridge is up, this result means the French commanders waiting to cross allowed a few wagons loaded with cartridges to sneak past them. Roll for command suffering ammunition shortage until one succeeds or all failed. If rolled when the bridge is down, a commander cautiously restricts his troops. A command randomly chosen now suffers an ammunition shortage. Consolidation. A French player can dissolve all infantry units, but the strongest in any division of either 2 or 4 corps that have no enemy adjacent, and hand over the surviving boxes to the stronger unit, thereby allowing to erase permanent kills. The division is now permanently wrecked. I don't know why you would do this. At least it's May. Tempers. Bessier and Lan bitched at Bessier a couple of times. And here Bessier can't take it. This will treat Bessier and his subordinates as 0-rated commanders when handling any order involving attaching units to Lan or any cav unit being attached to Lan. When the event is rolled, immediately returns to Bessier. If this result is rolled again, Bessier calms down. Check the bridges. The engineers need some encouragement. Napoleon must move to the bridge and spend the next French command phase there. He can't issue any orders. Panic. If rolled during the 22nd, this roll means that all the French wrecked divisions must take separate attack stoppage checks, and the ones that fail must make an emergency withdrawal towards the bridge. This roll has no effect before dawn of the 22nd. It's at the divisional level, which is weird. Normally, it's corps attack stoppage. Fire. A hex in one of the villages catches fire. Place a suitable fire marker in a randomly determined village hex. That was the scene of a close combat in the previous turn. Yeah, what if it wasn't? Units starting a turn in a fire hex must check morale, as must any unit that enters a fire hex. Units that fail the check become disorganized. Each time the turn marker is moved, any fire on the map will burn out on a roll of one die of 5 or 6. Or if there's a rainstorm. Or is that the rainstorm roll? No. And then, like I said, some good historical notes. All right, that was plenty for, to call this an intro video. I don't know what's up with me. My batteries are not charging. But yeah, I'm trying to push myself into playing board games rather than stupid Shadow Raid, but that's almost impossible. Well, you see on the board, the French holding their bridgehead, very few Austrian units available to begin with, and what do we got? What else? Oh, we got the Dean counter and the Bulldog. There was no turn marker for this game. They actually call that out in the errata or whatever. There was something I wanted to say, but I don't fucking remember anything. Oh, yeah. So what made this kind of less interesting to me, and honestly Shiloh feels the same kind of way, is you've got this, little bridgehead thing, well fortified terrain. The Austrians trying to attack it. There's not a lot of room for maneuver in this one. And however you want to take that can be kind of disheartening. Now in Shiloh, there kind of is because you've got a lot less well anchored position, and the Confederates really are going to gain some ground against the Union in Shiloh. Here, I don't know if the French can easily be dislodged. They're sitting, although villages are fucking weird now. These poor guns only can fire one gun point out. But between the two villages and the breastworks between them, that looks like a pretty well anchored and defended position. And under the old rules, it was. We'll see if the new rules fuzz that up a little bit in terms of the villages. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of Austrian troops hitting a weak defense and then forces coming in slowly. What seems like it should be an interesting battle just never really caught my fancy before. But I don't know. I feel like the battle choices in this series, other than Austerlitz, are part of what doomed it.